Good evening and thanks for tuning in. We're entering a new Sefer now, Sefer Shmos. And Sefer Shmos, we know is Sefer Banim. We have Sefer Bereshis, Sefer Avos, our ancestry, where we come from, who we are, and Sefer Banim, actualizing and putting into motion and making a reality all the things that we've learned from the life of Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, the Shvatim. So Sefer Shmos introduces us to Moshe Rabbeinu. And I want to share with you a Rashi, a simple Rashi on a pasuk. The pasuk says, Vayihi bayom emahem. This is telling us Moshe Rabbeinu was raised in the home of Paroi, as Basya Bas Paroi raised him. And Vayihi bayom emahem vayigdal Moshe. And Moshe grew up. So Rashi says it can't be that he grew up because the pasuk already before says Vayigdal Hayeled. So we're not talking about him just maturing and reaching adulthood, but Vayigdal means that he became a great person. He was Oila Legdula. He achieved greatness. So let's see, what is his first act and what is this demonstration of his greatness? So let's continue the pasuk. Vayigdal Moshe, he achieved greatness. And what's the demonstration? Vayetze el Echav, he went out to his brethren. Vayar b'sivloisam, and he observed and he saw their suffering and their pain. And Rashi says, Vayar b'sivloisam, nosan einav v'libai liyois meitzer aleihem. That Moshe Rabbeinu made an effort. He had to use Eino v'libai, Nosan Eino v'libai. He put his eyes and his heart into what he saw to feel the pain of his brethren. You know, Moshe Rabbeinu was raised in the lap of luxury, in royalty. He hears these rumors that his brethren, where he comes from, they're suffering and they're in pain. And he goes and he observes, but he doesn't just observe it. But he puts forth an effort to feel that pain, to intellectually, einov, libai, emotionally, to know what they're going through. And it's not enough to just know what they're going through and to feel their pain. But based on that feeling, he began to act. Action. Oh, I feel for you. No. Action. Feeling, understanding what you're going through, how you're processing it, and then action. What's the next pasuk? Vayarish Mitzri Maka Ish Ibri Meyachav, and he starts to intervene. And as we know, the next day he goes out and he sees a Mitzri trying to beat up a Jew, and he protects the Jew and he kills the Mitzri. He puts it into action. So I once heard from Rav Don Segel, he quoted from Rav Shach, that Rav Shach said, I'll say it first in Yiddish, Rav Shach said, what we see from this Rashi here is Vayigdal Hayeled, he became great. And what did he do? He felt someone else's pain and he started to help and to care for them and to nurture them and to embrace them. So Rav Shach said, as the shir kaima von a mensch messach mit sein midas hatava. That the shir kaima, the greatness of a person, how do you measure greatness? Their ability to help others. That's what the pasuk tells me. Vayigdal Moshe, and what was his greatness? Vayetze el Echav, vayar b'sivloisam, and he took action. So he said, the shir kaima von a mensch, the greatness of a person is measured by his ability in direct proportion to his ability to be a native to others and to feel their pain. I want to end with a story. When I was a kid, my father would take us to an eye doctor named Dr. Goldstein. And he was like a really famous, very academic, a professor of ophthalmology, but he worked in downstate in the hospital, and part of his professorship was that he had to run a clinic once a week, and to the clinic anyone could come. So we would go to the clinic, you pay $5, you get into the clinic, and he would check our eyes, and he became, our eye doctor. He was a frum guy, actually, and whenever we would come, we would take hours, because my father would end up just schmoozing with him and talking with him. He himself was a polio survivor. Hashem, our generation doesn't know, but when I was a little kid, we still saw people They would have to go with these metal crutches. They couldn't walk. So in his office itself, he would sit on one of these office-style chairs with wheels on it, and he would push himself from one end of the room to the other. That's how he would get around. So he was what we would say a gelitin yid, a person who knew suffering. Fine. One day we come into his office, and he's wearing a patch over one of his eyes. So my father says to him, Dr. Goldstein, what happened to your eye? So he says, I'll tell you. A lot of times I get patients severely ill, really trouble with their eyes, and I have to prescribe a patch for a week, for 2 weeks, and they always complain. They say, oh, doctor, please, it's so difficult. And I think to myself, what's so difficult? I mean, you wear a patch on your eye for 10 days, big deal. And I say, no, your sense of balance is off, your sense of depth is off, you can't drive. So finally I said to myself, you know what, let me try it. And he wore a patch for 10 days straight. Not tried for a minute. He did what he would prescribe for a patient. And he was in the midst of it right now when we came to see him. He said, I want to feel what they're feeling so I can know, is this the only option? After 10 days, my father was curious. He called him up and he said, no, what's the psak? He said, Charlie, I'm telling you, last resort. From now on, it's last resort. I'll give them medicine. I'll give them drops. I'll do anything. Last resort. So here was a fella, a polio survivor. He knew pain and suffering, but he didn't know this pain, this suffering of wearing a patch. And the only way he could help them is by feeling it. Dr. Goldstein was a great ophthalmologist, a great person. Vayigdal, his greatness is measured by his ability to help others. Moshe Rabbeinu, who we're going to study now, Parsha, for the rest of the Chamisha Chumsha Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu is the focus, is the central theme of everything that we are. Our teacher, our Rebbe, our everything. Moshe Rabbeinu. And it starts with his first act of greatness. Putting forth an effort to feel someone's pain. Eino v'libai. Making that conscious, intellectual, and emotional effort to feel someone else's pain, and then acting upon it. That's greatness. May we all have a great Shabbos.